What would you do if your parents rewrote your grandfather's will, erased your name, and gave everything to your brother? No warning. No apology. Just a sewing machine and a silent goodbye. 8 years later, I bought the house they stole and turned it into a fashion empire. If stories like this leave you speechless, hit subscribe. Outlaw Alley brings the rawest Reddit family drama stories to life. The house still smelled like lemon polish and old tobacco when I walked through the door that day. It was the same creaky Georgia farmhouse I grew up in, the same sun-baked porch where my grandfather used to drink sweet tea and call me his little designer. He'd always said the house would be mine one day. Said it with his whole chest. Right in front of my brother, my parents, everyone. Natalie, he told me, this place is yours. You dream in color. You make something out of nothing. The others, they inherit things. You build them. I believed him. I was 19, fresh out of high school with a portfolio bursting at the seams and an acceptance letter to Parsons tucked in my purse like a holy document. I came home that weekend not to fight over anything, but to honor a man who believed in me more than anyone ever had. My grandfather had passed quietly in his sleep. I was heartbroken, yes, but I was also proud to carry forward what he'd nurtured in me. The entire family gathered in the living room for the will reading. I wore black. Michael didn't. He showed up late, reeking of beer and bravado in a graphic tee with a slogan that said something about grinding and crypto. He'd already dropped out of college twice. My mother called him a free spirit. I called him reckless, but I said nothing. The attorney opened a manila envelope and began reading in that dry, practiced tone that makes grief feel like a business transaction. I waited patiently. I wasn't expecting much. I just wanted what had been promised. The farmhouse and maybe a small slice of his savings to help pay tuition. But that's not what happened. Everything was left to Michael. The house. The land. The savings account. Even the old Dodge truck. I got a sewing machine. Not even a note. Not even a sentence to explain the change. Just a line. To my granddaughter Natalie, I leave her grandmother's sewing machine which she admired. The silence in that room hit me like a second death. I turned to my mother, who gave me that tightly rehearsed expression she always wore when she wanted to seem sympathetic but didn't actually care. It's what's best, she said softly, as if the decision had somehow been mine. Michael needs the foundation. You have your talent, honey. Parsons will open doors for you. I looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Parsons costs money. The house was supposed to be mine. He told me that for years. He shrugged. Sometimes plans change. I turned to my father, who didn't even meet my eyes. Michael? He grinned, as if winning the lottery somehow proved he deserved it. Don't worry, Nat, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. I'll let you sleep in the guest room when you come home broke. That's when I knew. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a coordinated erasure. They had rewritten the ending while I was still living the story. I walked out of the house without saying goodbye. I didn't pack much. Just some clothes, my sketchbook, and the sewing machine they thought would make it all okay. My mother followed me outside, called after me, said I was being dramatic. I didn't turn around. I remember standing at the end of that gravel driveway, sun baking my shoulders, tears drying mid-cheek. I looked back once. Just once. And I told myself something I never forgot. You don't belong here anymore. But you still belong somewhere. Go find it. So I left. No money. No backup plan. No home. But I had a sewing machine. And I had something they'd never be able to take back. Fire. When I stepped off the Greyhound in New York City, I was 19 and invisible. No one cared that I had once been the favorite granddaughter. No one cared about Parsons or my broken heart or the sewing machine strapped to my back with duct tape and prayer. The city swallowed me whole and didn't even blink. I rented a mattress in a basement apartment in Queens. 5 girls, 1 bathroom, no windows. I paid rent in cash from waiting tables at a diner in Midtown and selling handmade pouches on the sidewalk near Union Square. The pouches weren't good. Not yet. But they had charm, and I smiled big enough to make strangers pause. Every morning I rode the train with people who looked just as tired as me. Every night I worked until my fingers bled. I made things. Bags, scarves, denim patches. Anything I could stitch with trembling hands and burning eyes. Then came winter. My boss at the diner cut my hours. I got sick. Not hospital sick, but hungry sick. The kind where your stomach eats itself and your head buzzes when you stand up too fast. I started skipping meals to buy thread. One week I ate nothing but saltines and tap water. Then it happened. I came home to find the landlord had cut the heat. Another girl had moved out and we were short. No warning. Just cold. I looked at the sewing machine sitting in the corner. My grandmother's, my legacy, my curse. I hadn't used it much. The pedals stuck, the motor hummed too loud, but it still worked. It was old and heavy and a pain to carry. That night, I wrapped it in an old blanket, walked 2 blocks to the nearest pawn shop, and stared at the glowing open sign like it was a cross on fire. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes. Hands frozen. Breath shallow. I remember whispering to myself, "It's just a machine. You can always buy another." But it wasn't just a machine. It was the only thing I had left that came from love. Real love. Not conditional, not transactional. Just pure, old, gentle love from the woman who taught me how to make something from nothing. I turned around. Carried the damn thing home. My fingers numb. My pride intact. That night I plugged it in and stitched until sunrise. Denim scraps, lace trim, thrifted fabric. Anything I could find. I made a jacket. Crooked seams. Unfinished cuffs. Raw and imperfect and bleeding with everything I'd been holding in. I wore it the next day. A girl at the coffee cart complimented it. Asked where I bought it. I smiled and said, "I made it." She asked if I had an Instagram. I lied and said yes. That night I created one. A week later she tagged me in a photo. Her wearing the jacket. 400 likes. 3 DMs. 2 custom orders. That was how it started. I called it Walker Thread. A cruel little joke. I wasn't trying to reclaim the name. I was branding the wound. I sold my first 10 jackets through PayPal and word of mouth. I stayed up all night fulfilling orders, walking to the post office in cheap sneakers and fingerless gloves, praying the seams would hold. They did. One night I passed by a boutique window in Soho and saw a jacket almost identical to mine selling for $350. Mine had sold for $45. I stared for a long time. Not in jealousy but in hunger. I can do better than that. So I did. I registered Walker Thread as an official business. I saved every penny. I reinvested everything. I stopped waiting tables. I started teaching sewing lessons on weekends. Mostly to girls like me. Girls who had been told they weren't enough. We stitched and cried and drank too much bodega coffee. And when one of them asked why my label said Walker, I just smiled and said, "Because that name owes me." I didn't mean to start a business. I was just trying to stay fed. But pain has a way of teaching you things you never signed up to learn. Like how to make something with nothing and how to sell it like your life depends on it. As mine did. Orders kept coming. Slow at first, then in trickles that turned into waves. Each jacket was made by hand, stitched in a cramped kitchen between half-eaten meals and unpaid bills. I started labeling them with scraps of muslin and a rubber stamp that said, Walker Thread. People thought it sounded high-end. They didn't know it was my father's name. They didn't know it was the name I used not because I respected it, but because I wanted to own it before it owned me. I posted photos. I posted stories. One customer sent me a thank you video, just her spinning in her living room in one of my jackets, laughing. It made me cry. Not because she looked beautiful but because for the first time in years something I made brought someone else joy. Real joy. I had forgotten what that felt like. Then came Zoe. She walked into my pop-up stall in Williamsburg wearing silver boots and a camera crew. I didn't know who she was. She tried on 3 jackets, posted one to her story and left without buying anything. I figured it was a bust. The next morning my inbox had 83 new messages. Her followers, millennials with money and mood boards, wanted to know if the raw-edge asymmetrical denim goddess coat was still available. I didn't even remember which one she wore. I just said yes and started sewing like my life depended on it, because once again it did. By the end of that month, I had over 2,000 followers, 60 orders and 3 women from my sewing class helping me part-time. I didn't call them employees. I called them survivors. Each had her own battle scars. Abuse, eviction, addiction, divorce. We didn't talk much about the past. We let the machines hum for us. Walker Thread grew. We got a feature in a local fashion blog. Then a pop-up in LA. Then came an interview with an indie fashion zine that called me the Ghost Seamstress. A mysterious new designer using fashion to heal and protest and rebuild. I leaned into the mystery. I never showed my full face in photos. I gave interviews under the name N. Walker. I wanted the world to love the work without knowing who bled for it. I couldn't stop checking the family's Facebook pages. Michael had started a regenerative agriculture collective on the land he inherited. It was failing, obviously. He posted once about needing community-minded investors to help us return to the earth. It was all buzzwords and beanies. My mother shared every post like it was gospel. Not once did she mention me. It was like I'd been erased. But the erasure didn't hurt the way it used to. It just made me sharper. I took business classes online. Learned how to manage accounts, hire legally, scale ethically. We moved into a real studio space in Brooklyn. 600 square feet of exposed brick and possibility. I hired 6 women full-time, offered health benefits, started a scholarship fund for girls interested in fashion design but unable to afford college. We called it Thread Forward. And I still sewed. Every single day, no matter how big we got. Because the needle kept me honest. One day we got an inquiry from a department store buyer in Atlanta. They wanted to place a bulk order. 500 jackets. I laughed when I read the address. Peachtree Avenue. 10 minutes from my childhood home. The past, it seems, likes to visit even when it's no longer welcome. I almost declined. But then I thought about all the women who stitched with me. The customers who wrote to say my clothes made them feel powerful. The young girl who said she wore one of my jackets to her custody hearing because she needed to feel brave. And I said yes. I didn't need to prove anything to my family anymore. I was proving everything to the girl they left behind. She was finally building something bigger. Success doesn't silence the past. It just gives it more places to hide. Walker Thread was thriving, real thriving. Our studio had doubled in size. Vogue mentioned us in a side column. There were talks of a capsule collection with a boutique in Paris. But none of that prepared me for the email. It came from a law firm in New Jersey. A cease and desist. Cold, clinical, formal. My brand, Walker Thread, had allegedly infringed on an existing trademark. One registered by a man named Michael Walker. I laughed at first. A hollow, startled laugh. Truly it was a mistake. Some glitch. My brother didn't even know how to spell merchandise without autocorrect. But it was real. He'd filed a trademark for Walker Thread and Company 2 months prior. Claimed it was a family-owned, heritage-inspired fashion line built on the legacy of Southern craftsmanship. He attached sketches, some I recognized. Cropped, watermarked, watered down. I wanted to scream. Instead, I called my lawyer Andrea, who'd helped me register the business name back when I could barely afford her retainer. She was calm, smart, sharp enough to slice through nonsense. He's banking on you not having proof of origin, she said. But if you do, we can kill this. I did. I had everything. Photos. Timestamped social posts. Design journals. Even an old blog post where I first used the name Walker Thread in a story about my grandmother's sewing machine. I forwarded it all. Still, Andrea warned me, this could get ugly. And expensive. And it did. Michael wasn't just trying to profit off me. He was trying to erase me again. But this time I was ready. We filed a counterclaim. We sent our own cease and desist. We exposed his fraud in pretrial mediation. When his lawyers asked for a settlement, I said no. I didn't want money. I wanted the paperwork. I wanted the admission. I wanted the court to see it in writing. He tried to steal something that was never his. 2 weeks later, his team dropped the case. I didn't hear from him after that. Not a text. Not a call. But I knew the silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Because a month later, my mother emailed me. Just one line. Michael regrets what happened. He wants to meet. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just an offer of peace without the price of accountability. I ignored it. Until another email came. This one from an organization I'd never heard of. The Rural Arts Revival Summit. A flashy fundraising event for emerging creative hubs in underserved southern communities. The location? Walker Heritage Farm. My childhood home. Attached was a digital flyer. And there he was. Michael, grinning in a fitted blazer, holding a denim jacket that looked suspiciously familiar. Caption read, honoring his late sister's creative spirit, Michael Walker opens the family homestead to innovation and healing. Late sister. Late. He had told the world I was dead. To sell a dream. To steal a brand. To market my pain as his narrative. I sat with that sentence for a long time. Longer than I care to admit. I read it again and again, looking for any glimmer of remorse, of miscommunication. There was none. Just a photo. Why? And the same entitlement I'd grown up choking on. I showed it to Andrea. "Tell me this is illegal," I whispered. "It's disgusting," she said. "But unless he's committing fraud or using your full name, it's technically performance." I nodded slowly. "Then let's give him an encore." The listing came up late one night while I was doom-scrolling real estate apps. A weird habit I'd picked up, looking at dream homes I couldn't quite justify yet. I wasn't looking for that house. Not really. But there it was. My childhood home. The Walker farmhouse. The photo was jarring. The paint was faded, the porch sagging, windows clouded like the place had stopped breathing. But I knew those walls. Knew the creak in the third step, the way light filtered through the lace curtains at 4 p.m., how the floor slanted just slightly in the kitchen. I hadn't seen it in years. Not since I walked away. But seeing it listed, for auction no less, felt like someone had ripped open a scar I didn't even realize was still tender. I clicked. The details were as brutal as the photo. Foreclosure. Probate complications. Sold as is. Probate complications. Michael had failed. Turns out, regenerative farming and Instagram quotes about soil chemistry don't pay a mortgage. Not even when you pair them with lies about a dead sister. My hands trembled as I dialed Andrea. "Can we buy it?" I asked. "Through a third-party shell?" "Absolutely. Make it happen." It closed in 6 weeks. Clean. Quiet. My name never touched the paperwork. On record, the house now belonged to Marley and Wren Properties. A dummy LLC Andrea had used before for clients who needed discretion. I didn't cry when we signed. I didn't smile. I just breathed, deep, grounded, whole. I didn't buy it for revenge. I bought it to reclaim the part of me they had tried to erase. The night after the sale, I drove down to Georgia in an unmarked rental parked across the street and just watched. The house was dark. A for sale sign still tilted in the yard. I sat there until the sun came up, wondering what my grandfather would have said if he could see me now. Probably something simple like, "Took you long enough." A week later the email came. This time it wasn't from Michael or my mother. It was from the summit's official coordinator. Apparently my name had been passed along as a potential guest speaker, someone who'd built an empire from Southern grit. The irony nearly made me choke. I read it 3 times. Then I replied, "Happy to attend. RSVP, yes." They didn't know. They didn't know the house was mine. They didn't know I'd been watching. They didn't know I was coming, not as a victim, not as a ghost, but as the storm. I flew in 2 days before the event. Booked a hotel room under a different name. I didn't tell anyone, not my staff, not the press. Just Andrea, who agreed to come with me, mostly to keep me from throwing a chair if things got heated. The morning of the summit I dressed slowly. White button-down. High-waisted black trousers. A custom denim trench from our newest line, stitched in gold thread across the back. Built from nothing. We arrived just before noon. The event was packed. Local donors, bored socialites, investors with too much money and not enough due diligence. The walls were decorated with blown-up photos of the land, old family photos, and a giant projection of Michael holding a denim jacket I had made 3 years ago. He stood on stage smiling like he'd earned it. I stayed in the back. Watched him charm the crowd. He was slick now, polished, with a rehearsed story about his sister's tragic death, and how it inspired him to honor her creative spark by turning pain into purpose. I nearly vomited. And then he opened the floor for questions. That was my cue. I stepped forward, heels echoing on the wooden floor. Microphone in hand. "Calm. Steady." "Hi, Michael," I said. He froze. The crowd turned. He blinked. Sorry, do I know you?" "You should," I said. "You used to call me Nat. Before you told the world I was dead." The silence was nuclear. I continued. "You've built this entire event on the story of a sister who supposedly died in New York, broken and forgotten. Except I didn't die. I built Walker Thread. I made every piece you're holding. And I own this house." I turned to the crowd. "So before you write any checks, ask yourself, are you investing in a vision? Or a lie?" Michael stammered something, but I was already walking away. I didn't need the applause. I didn't need the press. I just needed the truth to land. And God did it land. The press didn't take long. Within hours, clips from the summit hit TikTok, then Instagram, then Twitter. The caption everyone seemed to agree on was simple. He said she was dead. She showed up instead. The video had over 1 million views by morning. People were angry. At him. At the lie. At the way he clutched a jacket he hadn't sewn and spun a narrative he hadn't lived. I didn't respond to the interviews, didn't do a press run. I didn't need to. The truth was finally louder than their story. Still, the real confrontation came later. Not in a ballroom full of investors, but in a faded living room with lace curtains and too many ghosts. I was back in the house. My house. And they, my mother and Michael, were waiting. Andrea had sent a formal notice of ownership transfer. Eviction proceedings if necessary. They knew I was the new owner now. No more hiding. No more pretending. But my mother still had the nerve to look shocked when I walked through the front door. She was sitting in the old armchair, the one my grandfather used to nap in. She looked smaller now. Grayer. But her eyes. Still sharp as ever. Michael was pacing. He stopped when he saw me. "Natalie," he said, like we were childhood friends meeting at a reunion, not war-torn siblings on opposite sides of the truth. "You told them I was dead," I said calmly. "That's not marketing. That's erasure." He held up his hands. "I didn't think." "That's the problem," I cut in. "You never think. You just take. You took the house. You tried to take my name. And when that didn't work, you tried to take my death." He looked to our mother like maybe she'd jump in off her cover. He didn't. "I just wanted to keep the land," he mumbled. "I thought if I honored your story." "You didn't honor my story," I snapped. "You rewrote it. To make yourself look better." My mother finally spoke. "Enough. This family's been through enough humiliation." I turned to her. "You think you've been humiliated? Try waking up to find your legacy stripped, your name hijacked, and your death announced to strangers." She sighed. "You've always been dramatic." That was when I laughed. A dry, bitter thing that didn't even sound like me. "You forged a lie, and when the truth showed up, you called it drama." "I did what I had to do," she said coldly. "Your brother needed help. He's always struggled. You've always managed to land on your feet." "You mean survive?" I asked. "You think survival is the same as support?" She didn't answer. "I found the original will," I added. "Grandpa left everything to me. The house. The land. The savings." Her jaw tightened. "And you changed it," I continued. "You manipulated him when he was sick. Told the lawyer I had mental health issues. Faked a doctor's note. Said I wasn't fit to handle finances." "I was protecting you," she said flatly. "No," I said, voice steady. "You were protecting him. Your golden boy. Your failure you kept trying to polish." Michael stepped forward. "We can work something out, maybe co-own the brand? Turn the farm into a creative retreat." I looked at him like he was a stranger. "You tried to sell my funeral as a business pitch. You're lucky I'm not pressing charges." He went quiet. I pulled a document from my bag. A contract. A lease termination agreement. 90 days to vacate. No renewal. "You can stay for 3 more months," I said. "After that you're out." My mother didn't look surprised. Just tired. "You're really doing this," she said softly. "Yes," I replied. "And not because I want revenge. Because I want peace. And there's no peace in a house built on lies." She signed. So did he. I didn't wait for a thank you. I didn't wait for an apology that would never come. As I left the house, I paused at the front porch. Once a place of lemonade and fireflies and promise. I ran my hand along the old railing. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. Not because I won, but because I no longer needed them to lose. The day after they signed the lease termination, I drove to the county records office. I told myself it was for closure, that I just needed a paper trail. Proof that it was over. But what I found wasn't closure. It was the start of another unraveling. The clerk, a wiry woman with tired eyes and a chewed-up pen cap, handed me a folder with the original will and the amended version. I flipped through the pages mechanically, half expecting what I already knew. My grandfather had changed it. That was how Michael got everything. But then I saw the date. The revision had been made exactly 6 days after Grandpa was hospitalized for the second time. 6 days after he called me from his hospital bed and said, "Don't worry, Nat. I've got everything handled. Just keep designing." The signature on the amendment was shaky, planted, different from the original, and attached to it was a physician's letter, dated the same day, certifying Grandpa as mentally fit for estate planning. The doctor's name was familiar. I pulled out my phone and searched him. Sure enough, he was the same physician my mother had once introduced at a Rotary Club dinner. They'd been friends for years. I sat in my car for 20 minutes after that, staring at the dashboard like it might blink out a different version of the truth. But the truth was this. My mother hadn't just influenced the will, she'd orchestrated it. She'd found a doctor to sign off, pushed an old man during a vulnerable moment, used his fading clarity to rewrite my future in ink. She hadn't just chosen Michael. She'd erased me, not because I wasn't good enough, but because I didn't fit into the narrative she wanted. That night, I found the first draft of the will in a manila envelope in the attic of the farmhouse. I hadn't been looking for it, just digging through old linens, deciding what to keep, what to burn. It was tucked inside a box labeled Receipts, 2004. Handwritten, signed, witnessed, and it said exactly what I'd remembered. I leave the Walker farmhouse to my granddaughter, Natalie Ray Walker, for her vision, her dedication, and her unwavering sense of self. I pressed my hand to the paper like it might still be warm. He had chosen me. He had meant it. And they'd stolen it. I took the document to Andrea the next morning. She studied it, then looked up with an expression that was part admiration, part restrained fury. "This is enough," she said. "If you want to pursue charges, fraud, coercion, maybe even elder abuse, we can build a case." I shook my head. "No court can give me back what they took." She frowned. "Then what do you want?" I didn't answer right away. I just stared out the window, watching a couple argue over a parking space, both convinced they were right. "I want to restore the original will," I said finally. "Legally, quietly. And I want it on record that the house was always supposed to be mine." Andrea nodded. "It can be done." And it was. The process took weeks, but eventually the county court filed a corrected record, listing me as the original and rightful heir. No press. No scandal. Just justice slipped between the lines of history like a stitch only the maker can see. After it was done, I mailed a copy to my mother. No note. No return address. Just the truth. 3 days later, I got an envelope in return. No name. Just a single item. My baby photo folded in half. I stared at it for a long time, wondering what it was supposed to mean. Regret? Bitterness? A message that even as a baby I'd never belonged? Or maybe it wasn't for me at all. Maybe she just didn't know what else to send. I put the photo in a drawer and didn't look at it again. Some things don't need framing. Some truths don't need to be spoken to be known. And some victories feel more like letting go than holding on. The house sat quiet the morning they moved out. No slammed doors. No goodbyes. Just the hollow drag of suitcases and a U-Haul idling in the gravel. I didn't watch them leave. I didn't need to. Their absence wasn't a victory. It was an ending. One I'd been owed for years. When the door finally closed behind them, I stood in the living room alone. No furniture. No memories I hadn't already bled out of. Just dust and light and a silence I didn't fear anymore. I walked barefoot through the hallway, my footsteps echoing off walls that once held whispers I wasn't meant to hear. I didn't cry. I wasn't sad. I was finally empty, but in the best way. Like a suitcase after a long trip. Like lungs after a scream. That spring we broke ground on the new Walker Thread headquarters. Right there on the farmland they said I'd never deserve. The barn became our studio. The porch a showroom. The kitchen a place where we shared meals and stories and survival tips like recipes. I kept the original wood floors. Painted the walls with colors I once only dreamed about as a kid. Midnight blue, burnt sienna, gold that shimmered under soft lamplight. Women came from everywhere. Former inmates. Runaways. Survivors. Artists. Dreamers. We trained them. Paid them. Listened to them. Not like charity but like investment. Because every person who walked through those doors brought something money couldn't buy. Grit. Walker Thread grew from a whisper to a wave. We got featured in The New Yorker. A documentary crew came by. One of the jackets ended up on a red carpet. I didn't go to the event. I was in the studio that night fixing a busted machine and laughing with a girl who used to sew by flashlight in a shelter bathroom. She told me, "This place, it saved me." I smiled and said, "Funny. It saved me too." I never changed the brand name. People asked if I wanted to rebrand now that I had distance, now that the family was out of the picture. But I didn't. I kept it. Not because it honored them. Because it outlived them. On the front door etched in steel are the words, "Walker Thread, built from nothing." Inside above the fireplace hang 3 things. 1. The original will, now framed, legally recognized, notarized. My quiet justice. 2. My first jacket, frayed and crooked, stitched in hunger and hope. 3. A brass plaque that reads, Natalie Ray Walker, founder. Seamstress. Survivor. That last word matters most. Because in the end this wasn't a revenge story. Not really. I didn't destroy them. I didn't need to. I outgrew them. They gave everything to my brother. The name, the land, the legacy. And still I built the empire. Not from anger. Not from hate. But from the single unwavering truth I carried with me through every betrayal, every frostbitten night, every needle prick and broken promise. I was never theirs to define. I don't know where they are now. I don't look them up. If they ever drive past the house, I hope they see the porch lights glowing, hear laughter pouring through the windows, smell fresh coffee from the open door. And I hope they realize, the home they thought they stole, I made it mine anyway. Not with permission. With purpose.